Minor gripe, a pet peeve of mine is when people will take a franchise that they love and say, there's just not a bad movie in the bunch. And at times, that can be true, but most of the time, that's not true. I posed the question on Twitter the other day, what is the worst Saw movie? And based off of your responses, my opinion, and what I've just seen online, I think I have the answer for that. What's up, everybody? Nick here at the Lost River Drive-In, and I am here to discuss what is the worst Saw movie, the weakest Saw film in the entire franchise. Now, part of this is my opinion because it's all subjectivity. I just want to get that right off the top. I know some people are going to like my least favorite movie, and I just know it. That's fine. Films have fans, and they should. Having said that, though, I have gathered the general sentiment of what the answer to that question is, and it lines up with my opinion too, and I think a lot of my close friends in my inner circle, I think we all share that same opinion. You may still enjoy the movie, but agree that it's the weakest film in the series. So let's just get right into it. I posed the question, what was the worst Saw movie? And I picked the 4 lowest rated films, and the 4 that you always hear people talk about being the worst. Most people are going to say that one of these 4 movies in the franchise is the worst. Saw 5, Spiral, Jigsaw, and Saw the Final Chapter. The winner of that poll was Jigsaw. Now, before we get into Jigsaw, let me just say a couple things. I used to dislike Saw 5. I really did, from the first time I watched it. As the years have gone on, I've actually come to really kind of accept it and almost appreciate it. There's things about it I don't like. It's the first movie where you're really getting to learn about Hoffman. I like a lot of the stuff with John and Hoffman and their relationship. I do enjoy that quite a bit. And I love the end of this film. There's stuff in the middle that I just feel like is unnecessary, and Hoffman is just sloppy. But that's the point. After you watch it a couple times and you accept those certain things as fact, it's so much easier to accept and to go, you know what? I like this movie for what it is. So I'm glad this did not win the poll. Spiral is an interesting one because it's very much not a Saw movie while also sharing a lot of the same DNA, which is frustrating at times. You want to hear Hello Zepp, you want to see Billy, you want to see John Kramer, but unfortunately you don't get those things. On the one hand, it's nice that they wanted to try something different and really tried to build out this universe almost. But at the same time, it's kind of counterproductive, isn't it? We come to Saw for John Kramer, for Jigsaw. That's what we want. The iconography with this series is, I would say, of the utmost importance. This movie not having any of that, you can take this movie for what it is and say, I had a good time with this movie. I enjoyed it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't hit the same, and it doesn't stay with you like the other Saw movies do. I'm glad this one didn't win as well, but this is second to last for me. Saw the Final Chapter is also an interesting one because, the quality of this movie compared to the 6 that came before it, it is undoubtedly the lowest. I understand, there's the pink blood is really annoying. A lot of people pointed out correctly it's because of the 3D and whatnot, but still, very jarring if you're not watching the movie in 3D. There's a lot about it that is thrown together very quickly because it was supposed to be spread out into 2 movies, but they thought the franchise was on its last leg, so they crammed it all into one. They kind of, I would say, screwed the pooch with the Gordon reveal at the end there because they pretty much alluded to it at the beginning of the movie, which is a bummer. It would have been really awesome if they didn't do that. Having said a bunch of things about this movie that just aren't great, it's a fun time. It's a fun time that delivers on so much that was built up for the previous 6-7 years with that ending alone. Heading back to the bathroom with Dr. Gordon being involved the entire time. That ending alone is enough for me to say, you know what? I'm okay with this movie. Is it great? No. But I'm okay with it. There's a lot I don't like about it, but I do think it's a really fun time. But what won the poll is what I have always said since I saw it for the very first time is the weakest Saw film, and that is unequivocally Jigsaw. As I said at the top, this is all subjective. This is my opinion. We all have our own opinions. So don't think this is me trying to tell you you cannot argue with me about liking or not liking Jigsaw. For me, and for most of the fan base, this is the weakest one. Why is that? Because it's just not very good. Now, I can get into the details, and I will a little bit, because I'm not just going to make a blanket statement like that and then not expand upon it. First of all, it is always a huge, huge, huge bummer and a very easy way to piss me off and a lot of viewers off of by saying, everything you just saw happened 10 years ago. Whoa, ho, ho. That is the cheapest thing you can do. So, okay, they did that. Whatever. We accept it because we have to accept it. So where do we go from there if that is the case? Well, you would think that it would line up a lot with previous Saw movies since it took place, years ago, before all these games, right? You'd see other characters, you'd see, linear things here and there. No. No Jill, no Amanda, no Hoffman, no connections to any of them at all. Just very, very... Now, again, I know, well, this was his first game. This was before those games. Yes, but seeds should have been planted. Especially if you're trying to convince me that this is what started it all for John Kramer. Seeds would have been planted. There would have been things that we would have gone, oh, that's where that came from. That's where that was. That's who that was. None of that is there. They simply just have the 10 years ago excuse because it's an excuse to bring this series back without having to reboot. That's the only reason they did it. It is just, well, we can just say it's a game that they never saw before, right? We never talked about it because it never actually happened, but let's just say it's one they didn't see before. They'll accept that. We can bring Tobin Bell back. I guess, but at what cost? Because even giving you that, you bring Tobin Bell back for one scene. Now, I will say it's unequivocally the greatest scene in the film. Bar none, hands down, not even a question. It's the best scene in the movie. But, again, goes to show you what makes this series work. The one scene in this movie that most people can agree they like is the one scene with Tobin Bell. Maybe you should have had more of him. I don't know. Crazy thought. Another big complaint I have with this movie is how much it stretches believability. And I get that that is just part of film. Like, stretching believability is it's par for the course. Having said that, though, like, some of the stuff in this movie is just like, no. First of all, how did the redhead build an exact replica of a trap of a game that nobody knew about before and have it up in that warehouse? How do you even get it in there? Where's your degree to create something like this? If it completely undercuts what you tell us about John Kramer, that he was this engineer, this brilliant mind, that only he could do some of these things. But a fan that just kind of has a taste for the macabre and sick and is kind of obsessed with him is able to not only recreate something that nobody knew about, but also just somehow have it in this warehouse. I mean, and on top of that, it was a complete red herring, and it was so obvious that she was not involved, but the movie's like, oh, maybe, oh, no. The Logan reveal. I too do like the character of Logan. I will say that. I've seen people say, well, I liked the character and I liked the actor. I like him too, even though he looks like he's related to Strawman Hoffman. I'm not convinced that they're not all related somehow, which would honestly be wild. But I like him too. I think he's a good actor and I like his character. But, I mean, come on. Like, another apprentice? Another apprentice we knew nothing about? That just happened to not show up in any other movie? Like, Hoffman kept showing up. Amanda kept showing up. This dude is just like, I've been the apprentice all along, from the very beginning. But I never showed up in any of the movies, it's just another clear example of the writers going, well, we need to invent something that we never thought of before that there's going to be no connective tissue back to. And that's what they did. And it's so obvious, like looking in hindsight, you're like, oh God, you guys really were out of ideas, weren't you? Like this, it doesn't line up. It doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. I get frustrated when I talk about this movie. And I'm actually about to go watch it again after I'm done with this video because I want to refresh myself on it. I want to remind myself why I don't like it because I like to be fair with these movies. But the believability in this movie is just, ugh. Now, another thing, the traps. Now, a lot of people might say, well, it was his first game. It makes sense for him to not have these super advanced traps. I mean, yes and no. I mean, you've got this corn silo trap or whatever that thing is that's just so like jerry-rigged and like, what the hell is this thing? Like, this is not inventive at all. But then in the same movie for the same game, you have this giant spinning tube of death. Like, so you can't use that excuse. Like, oh, well, it was his first game. He was inexperienced. Okay, explain that fucking thing. Exactly. It's poor writing. It's what it is. Like, sometimes we can be objective with movies and be like, that's just bad writing. That is bad writing. That's lazy writing. This was all to bring this franchise back, even though John Kramer was dead. Like, that's what the sole purpose of this was. The previous movies, they had movies mapped out. They knew what they were going to do a year before that movie even came out. This one, they had no idea. They had to start from scratch. They had to pull things out of their ass, and it shows, oh, so clearly in this film. But the worst thing about this movie, the thing about this movie that is its cardinal sin, it's boring. It's just boring. It is not interesting. I don't find myself in suspense whatsoever. I don't find myself liking any of the characters aside from Logan, and then you're supposed to not like him by the end. I'm bored. I'm bored. It is a chore to get through. You sit and you watch this movie and you're just like, I guess it's a Saw movie, kind of, but it doesn't really feel like it. And it really doesn't. I mean, it really does not feel like a Saw movie in so many ways. You know, you can give me a Tobin Bell scene and give me Hello Zep at the end of the movie, but does that really make it a Saw movie? As Spiral showed you a few years later, no. No, it just doesn't. There's so much about this series that makes it work. And I think that Jigsaw doesn't hit any of them. It really doesn't. And I think that's why this movie, for most people, not all, is their least favorite. And I am the same way. It's just, I think, completely void of what made Saw good, aside from an in-credits song and a scene of Tobin Bell. It's just not a very good movie. And it's a bummer because I remember that a lot of people were excited to see Saw come back. And I remember that first trailer going like, dude, is he still alive? What? This could be wild. Nope. What they end up giving you is this just poorly written, boring snooze fest. I mean, that's just really how I feel about it. Now, I already know someone's going to say they love this movie, and more power to you. I wish I could get there, but I just can't. I think that unequivocally, Jigsaw is the weakest Saw film. And I hope it stays that way. I never want this franchise to get back to these depths. And it just goes to show that they realize their mistakes, because they're coming back years later and they're making a midquel that takes place between Saw and Saw 2. You know, so they can bring Tobin Bell back and make him front and center. So they can bring Shawnee Smith and Costas Mandylor back, because they've wised up to what makes this franchise work. And it's not spinoffs and it's not one-offs. It's Jigsaw. So I guess this pairs perfectly with the video I did yesterday about Jigsaw being a horror icon. But I want to know down below, guys, what you think the weakest Saw movie is and why. Again, this is all opinion. Let's be cordial about it. Let's be respectful about it. But let's discuss it, because I want to hear from you. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out before somebody tells me they want to play a game.